everybody, to another fabulous Monday night RfRx talk. I'm your host, Kara, and I am here with the fantastic Sacha D'Souza. Sacha, how are you?
I'm great. I'm doing well. Welcome to everybody. How are you been, Kara?
I am doing well. I'm actually recording from a different location than usual. I'm on vacation this week, and I am loving it.
Wonderful. Whereabouts? Anywhere exciting near the coast, in the mountains?
I'm in the mountains in Colorado, and it is lovely. It's beautiful, and it's not 110 degrees, which is awesome.
Fantastic. Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And how are things in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of things happen in Australia, as usual. We've had a very, very wet few months on the East Coast. We've had flooding in so many parts of Australia, huge amounts of damage. So many people have been affected, sadly. And we're expecting perhaps another few months of issues. Today's a beautiful day, but who knows what it will bring. But yeah, there's been a lot of people doing it tough out here in Australia recently.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds like that's kind of going on everywhere lately. So we will do our best to make it through. But glad you're doing okay and that everybody here has been able to join us. And we also want to hear from all of you who are here this evening. So we are going to launch our poll for the beginning of the show, as we always do, to have a few topical questions to hear from everyone. And we'll go ahead and launch that now. I'll read them out to you and feel free to pick the most appropriate answer for you. The first question is, have you ever been in a mixed faith relationship? Yes, no, not sure, or I have not been in a romantic relationship. Question 2, were you taught that relationships with people of other faiths were wrong or inappropriate? Yes, no, or this never came up. 3, have you worried about losing important relationships as a result of changing your faith? Yes, almost all of them, maybe some of them, or no, not at all. And finally, is it possible to have a successful, happy relationship if your partner's faith changes? Yes, no, or I don't know. So we'll leave that up for a little bit and give y'all a chance to answer that. We are going to be fascinated to hear your perspective on this, and we're going to learn more about some of those topics as we go on tonight. And first, before we do that, though, what are we doing here? Well, what is RfRx other than the best night of the week? It's Monday night. It's our weekly show where we have guests come on to talk about topics that might be relevant to people in RfR. And of course, it's not a replacement for our online community or our support groups, which are also fabulous and amazing, but it is meant to be a complement to those communities where we can learn about some new things, get some good advice and coping skills from all of our guests who come on and help us. And let me put this in the chat here. If you have topical questions, comments, or ideas for future show topics that you would like us to discuss, send us an email at rfrx@recoveringfromreligion.org. And if you realize that you have not seen every episode of RfRx, then you need to catch up on that because they are all available on YouTube and on our podcast. The ones on YouTube are not quite all the way updated. We're getting those up to date, but if you want the latest episodes that you might have missed in the last couple of weeks, check out our podcast to find those too. And so I've been talking about RfR, but what is RfR? Maybe you're new here and you haven't been to one of these episodes before, so I'll tell you. At Recovering from Religion, RfR, our mission statement is to offer hope, healing, and support to those who are struggling with issues of doubt and non-belief. And Sacha, how do we do that?
Thanks, Kara. That's a fantastic introduction. Yeah, our mission statement of hope, healing, and support is so valuable, and it really sums up everything that we try and do here at Recovering from Religion. We understand that if people are processing their faith, maybe looking at what they believe and why, or wherever they stand, we're here just to provide a comforting, supporting environment. We don't tell people what to believe or what they should think, but we're just here to meet people where they're at. And so I guess looking at the healing aspect, you know, when we're processing things, sometimes it's great to have someone to talk to. And so we have fantastic people on our helpline. If you go to the main page of recoveringfromreligion.org, you'll see there's a link there. You can either do it via phone call or via a chat, and you can talk to people who will understand where you're at, who will just listen with an empathetic ear, provide guidance and support where necessary, references, material that might be of benefit to whatever situation we're in. And one thing too about our well-trained agents, they have such a big heart. They have such kindness and understanding. And, you know, if anybody who has ever contacted Recovering from Religion support team will understand that that's definitely the case. Now, they have resources available that they can share. And honestly, I can't even begin to describe the wealth of information that they have at their disposal. So yeah, certainly take advantage of that. It's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week resource that is available to those.
Yeah, thank you.
There's another aspect, that's the healing. What about the hope aspect of our mission statement?
Yes, thank you. I would love to talk about that. So that is something that we try to offer through primarily sharing and listening to personal stories. And kind of the idea behind that is that we're all in this together. Maybe we're not all going through the exact same thing or the exact same circumstances, but sometimes it can be really helpful and hopeful and inspirational to hear from other people about maybe how they got through a hard time or some of their insights and experiences that they can share with us, and kind of building that sense of being in a community of people. I'm not the only one out here by myself dealing with all of this. There's a lot of us here, and sometimes you can get some hope from just realizing that and getting into some of those stories, which I've just dropped in the chat for you, links to our blog and our podcast, where we have all sorts of different options for you to look through. And the blog is on medium.com/excommunications, and then our podcast, recoveringfromreligion.org/podcast. So check those out if you're looking for more of those kinds of things, in addition to all of the other resources that you already mentioned, Sacha, which are vast. And then in addition to those, we have even more resources. Do you want to tell us a little bit about support?
Yeah, thank you. So many people will be familiar with this aspect of recovering from religion. We have amazing support groups that you can be a part of. We have 40 to 60 odd groups all over the world, and these take place online, so you can meet either via Zoom, or some of them are in person again now that the world's opening up. These support groups are peer support groups. They're run by really empathetic, well-trained people who understand that we need a safe environment where we can share our stories, where we can get that support. They're confidential in nature, so even if you're in a situation where you need to be cautious about where you're at, the support groups are a really safe space. You can find all that off the main page of Recovering from Religion. You'll find a link there to a map that will show you where the support groups are located. And you don't have to go to the one in your local area. If for some reason you might feel more comfortable joining a support group on the other side of the world, well, that's fine too. We do not expect people to stay within their region that they're assigned to or anything like that. So join the support groups. You will find that they have a wonderful culture, a really wonderful atmosphere. I've been privileged to be part of the support group team now for a couple of years, and it's such an enjoyable environment to be a part of. So please feel free to do that. So, you know, that covers our hope, healing, and our support aspect. But one thing about the support groups, you know, they are peer support. We don't have trained therapists there. We don't give advice or tell people what they need to do. But sometimes we do need that support from people who are qualified, from trained therapists. And we have resources there too, Cara. Do you know more about that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I'm glad you asked. And in fact, we have what we call the Secular Therapy Project, which is a way for you to connect with a licensed mental health care provider who is a secular mental health care provider. And the idea behind this is that, you know, maybe some people have sought out a professional before and encountered someone who was giving them advice about maybe you need to go pray about it, or something, you know, religious or spiritual that, you know, was not helpful to them. And so this is a way to make sure that doesn't happen. All of the therapists that you will be connected with through the Secular Therapy Project are carefully screened for 3 criteria. One is that they are appropriately licensed in their state or country. The second one is that they maintain a secular practice, which means that they're using evidence-based treatments. That's the third feature. They're using only evidence-based therapies, which means they're not going to be be proselytizing. They're not going to be telling you to go buy crystals or anything like that. They're just going to be doing evidence-based practice. And if that is something that you might be interested in seeking out, you can check out the link at seculartherapy.org. And then, in addition to that, we still have more resources to tell you about. Our online community is another place where you can meet not necessarily professionals, but other people who might be in a similar situation as you, or maybe coming from a similar background. And this is another place to kind of find and build community. And this is something that you can get involved in if you call or chat into our helpline and speak to one of our helpline agents. They can see if you're a good fit for our online community. It's not just open to everybody in the world. We try to make sure that it's a safe place for people who are not going to be encountering trolls or anything like that. It's a place for people who are struggling with doubts or disbelief or are recovering from religion or things like that. And so there are all sorts of channels in this online community that you can join where you might find people who have been through similar things as you. We have ones for just almost everything you can think of. We have ones for if you're a member of the LGBTQ plus community. We have ones for if you're a member of the military, or if you're a former Mormon, or, you know, we have one for empowered women, just almost anything. So you can find a group of people that might be able to share and relate to some of the things you're going through. And there are Sunday night Zoom meetings you can get involved in and everything like that. So if that's something that you might be interested in getting involved with, call or chat into the helpline and they'll see if that might be a good fit for you. And then on top of that, another place where you can find community is through the atheist community of Discord. Our RfRx shows are always streamed over there as well on the Discord channel, which is super fun and lively. And there's all sorts of fantastic people over there having all kinds of conversations about all things to do with being atheist. So if you have decided that you're an atheist and you want to engage with an atheist community, check that one out for sure on Discord. And I just dropped the link in the chat for that as well. Okay, I think that's most all of the resources, but what else can people do, Sacha?
Well, you know, one of the biggest things I think most of us find is that volunteering or giving of our own time or resources to help others can be so rewarding and so empowering. And we found that with the RfR community, so many people have just put their hand up to volunteer. There's no expectation to do it, but if you're in a position where you feel like you'd like to give some time or effort to help support other people, we always welcome that. We're looking for volunteers, and that might be perhaps to help with the online chats or take phone calls, maybe run a support group. Or maybe you think, oh, I'm not as good with people, but I'm great with technical things. Well, we'd love your help with some of our behind the scenes programming, perhaps some of our, whatever it is, our website production, some of our technical stuff with uploading our videos or doing our presentations like that. So if you're in a position, I can definitely say, and all of us here will attest to the fact that volunteering with recovering from religion is a very rewarding, very safe space where we actually get a lot of healing out of it ourselves as well. So we're always in need of volunteers. If you go to the main page of Recovering from Religion, have a look down to the volunteer tab, drop us a message and let us know what's available.
Yes, thank you so much for bringing that up, Sacha. And yeah, you are absolutely right, especially y'all tech people who know how to work the technologies. Please help me. Come volunteer with us and help me. I cannot. So your skills are valuable, whatever they are. We could probably find a place to plug you in.
And unlike church, there is no expectation to give a certain amount of time or money or anything like that. Whatever you have at your disposal, we're grateful for.
Wait, you mean I've been sending 10% of my income every month for no
yes.
What? Oh no. Just
That's
kidding.
our coffee fund.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. As long as it's going to a good cause.
That's right.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, definitely. We would love to have you. Okay. So what are we doing here tonight? Well, we're about to start our fantastic show that I have been so excited for a couple of weeks. I cannot wait to introduce our other guest. So what's the format here? If this is your first time at an RfRx, I'll just give you a brief rundown. We're going to have a discussion for about an hour with our guest. And then after that, we'll have about 20 minutes or so for Q&A. And the way that works best is if you have a question, type it into the chat. You can do that while the discussion is going on. Just preface it with the word question. and then type in your question into the chat, and we'll be collecting those throughout the discussion time. And then we'll try and ask as many of them as we can have time for at the end. And then we'll have some closing thoughts from our amazing executive director, kind of wrap things up. And then we will stop the recording and move into our hangout time, which is where you all can get to unmute yourselves and interact and ask questions and comment and continue the conversation about tonight's topic or whatever other topics come up. So that can go on for quite a while sometimes. So we'll definitely look forward to that. Hang around if you want to stay. And without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our guest tonight, who I am super excited for. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from our very own Sherrie D'Souza, who is not only an RfR board member, but chair for RfR Australia, international development director for RfR, wife to co-host Sacha, you may have noticed a similar last name, and is also a former Jehovah's Witness. And we're going to hear a lot more about that. So Sherrie, take it away. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I am feeling quite privileged to be doing this. And after all of those rather audacious titles that you just announced, feels quite surreal. But what we're going to be discussing today is a bit about my story and also Sacha's story. So we're going to have a pretty relaxed chat about our journey out of religion. But the whole idea, I suppose, is to offer hope to couples that find themselves in this kind of situation, and to also provide some tools and information and resources of what worked for us and what really helped us navigate the situation we found ourselves in a few years ago. But to understand that, you need to know a little bit about us first. So I have prepared some slides, which I am now going to go to. And let's start this presentation from the beginning. Okay, so my name is Sherrie D'Souza, and I was raised third generation Jehovah's Witness. My father was also raised a Jehovah's Witness, whereas my mother converted at the age of 19. She was quite vulnerable at that point in her life. She'd had quite a lot of trauma throughout her childhood, and most notably an older brother that she was very close to died by suicide. And so when the witnesses told her about their teaching of resurrection and that she would have the chance to see her brother again, she latched onto that and studied with the witnesses, met my father. The rest goes from there. So I came along only about 18 months after my parents were married, and being raised as a Jehovah's Witness child is a fairly intense experience. And I was quite a serious child as well. I felt very keenly my responsibility as the older sibling to set a good example to my younger sister, as I was told on nearly a daily basis. And when I got to school, I was the only Jehovah's Witness in school as well. So school did not feel like a safe environment, and it didn't also feel like a learning environment, because what was drummed into you at such a young age is that you were to view school as your own special territory, and that you had the opportunity to preach to other children and teachers as well, that the normal door-to-door knocking ministry wasn't going to reach. So, and I felt that very keenly as a young child, so had to do this dance between wanting to be popular, not being able to spend time with any classmates because they weren't witnesses, but also trying to preach to them so that they had an opportunity to not be killed at Armageddon. It's all very a heavy load for children to have on their shoulders at such a young age. I can remember after the annual conventions that the witnesses have, usually at each convention, there are new releases, new books or publications that have been produced by the organisation, basically more propaganda tools. But we would be very excited at these new releases of literature. And I have vivid memories in my primary school years, so not too much older than that photo of me in the green dress, actually. It would have been around that age, that my mother would prepare a presentation for me to share with the teacher after the convention. And so I had to summon up my courage as a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old and go up to the teacher after class and tell them about the convention and give them a book, whatever the book was that had been released. And I felt the pressure to do that, and I did do that. And I realise now the teachers were very kind in listening to me and in taking the literature. But I suppose the best way I can describe school was that you saw it first as an opportunity to preach to others. The learning and education part was secondary to that. So when I turned 9, I remember vividly a assignment that we'd been given at school of what were you going to be when you grow up? And as you can imagine with kids, you've got the boys thinking about being firemen and policemen, and the girls thinking about being nurses or teachers, very gender stereotypical roles. Whereas I took the question very seriously and thought, well, what do I want to do when I grow up? And at around this time, we had a circuit assembly, which was a 2-day assembly that the Jehovah's Witnesses have quite frequently. They have 2 throughout the year. And at that assembly were individuals who had become full-time servants for the organisation, devoting 90 hours a month of going door to door, preaching to people about the Bible and conducting Bible studies. And they spoke about, these 2 that were interviewed, they spoke about how much joy they had in being these regular pioneers and in teaching people about the Bible, that I was like a little 9-year-old impressionable going, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a regular pioneer when I grew up. And so I did my whole assignment on being a regular pioneer. And so that's ended up what I did do. I got baptized at 14 and left school in year 10, so didn't complete high school education, and became a regular pioneer at 16. Now,
Sherrie, it's almost as if the propaganda from this insular religious world controlled what it was that you thought and what you were going to do with your life. Am I being too cynical there?
No, you are not being too cynical at all. And I mean, it's hard in a few minutes to try to describe the first 15 to 20 years of your life, of how much it formed your identity.
But you didn't know anything but that, did you?
No, you had nothing else to compare it to. And I can remember the manipulation that was used. For example, on the very rare occasions where one of the kids at school actually wanted to spend time with me, and they might have asked me to, come around to my place after school and we can play. And like any other kid, you're like, oh, someone wants to play with me, and yes, I'd love to do that. But of course, you've got to ask the parents, and you know what your parents are going to say. You just know it. But the craftiness of the organisation in the way it manipulates situations like this, which you're going to see shortly. I've got a video for you. But if I had the courage to ask my parents and say, oh, Vanessa's asked me to go around after school and play, my father would sit me down and say, well, Sherrie, that's very nice that they want to spend time with you, but do they love Jehovah? And of course, you're forced to say, well, no, they don't. And so the next follow-up question was, well, if they don't love Jehovah, should you be spending time with them? And you're forced to be the person to say no. So it's not even the parent telling you, no, you can't go around to Vanessa's, but you're telling yourself. You're manipulated into this situation. So I suppose you're almost gaslighting yourself. It's yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And this starts at as soon as you can be old enough to ask if you can go over to a friend's house. They've already got you answering the questions.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And I suppose if you were to, say rebelliously, well, yes, I should hang out with them, I assume that would not be an acceptable response.
No. And
well, it all comes down to one thing, Sherrie. How were those who are outside of the Jehovah's Witness faith described, and how were we taught to think of them?
Well, that's it. I mean, they're worldly people. And that...
And worldly is not a good word. Like we think of the word worldly means educated, travel, dignified.
Worldly wise.
Worldly meant evil, to be feared, to be...
Correct. Correct. Like any high control group, Jehovah's Witnesses have loaded language where one word or two words pack a lot of meaning into it. Worldly was definitely one of them. So it being a very black and white religion, you are either in the truth or you are out of the truth. If you are not in the religion, you are worldly, and anything that is worldly is outside of the organization, and therefore by default, it's influenced by Satan.
Oh.
So yes. So, and it literally does become as black and white as that. And so when you, as a child, are going to school, you are mixing with the world out of necessity because you're going to school, but you are constantly made aware that you are surrounded by this worldly influence that is Satan inspired, and that, the kids at school are, they might be lovely children, but they're not serving Jehovah, and therefore that means it naturally puts them into Satan's camp.
And that there was always an ulterior motive, wasn't there, Sherrie? That our teachers were teaching us, but they might be slipping in satanic propaganda, or children might be kind to us and offer us candy, but it might be because they want to take us away from God. So we were kind of raised in this very suspicious mentality of everybody, that the kindest act was actually viewed with suspicion.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And were you expected to, I'm sorry.
No.
Were you expected to reveal to the other students and the teachers that this was your opinion of them? Like, did they know that your opinion was, well, you're not part of my belief, and therefore, I'm not going to be able to socialize with you. I am worried that you're, possessed by Satan or influenced.
You won't say it as outright as that, but it's present in every single day of being at school. So, for example, because it's commonly known about Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays, Christmas, Easter, any celebration really. So when you think of normal school activities, when those events come around, there are exercises that teachers will have for the children so that they can, make the most of those celebrations. We were not to be involved in any of that. So you are set aside and you're different from everybody else in that you cannot participate in those things.
Mother's Day, Father's Day.
Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, literally any celebration you can think of, or any event, commemoration. So like Veterans Day in the States, Thanksgiving, in Australia, Anzac Day, Australia Day, any of those, like that's patriotic and nationalistic, so you're not involved with that either. Even down to singing of the national anthem, and if there is a school song or school anthem, you cannot participate in that either. And so I remember once a week we would have school assembly, and at school assembly we'd be singing the national anthem and you'd salute the flag. Well, I couldn't participate in either of those two activities. And so you constantly feel different. All the time, different. And you just, and at 9, I know my classmates, they didn't know what to do with me. They just didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know how to relate. I didn't know how to relate to them. And so I had no friends at the age of 9. And I literally sat by myself at recess and lunch. It was intensely lonely, but I would tell myself, I'd pray and I'd tell myself that I had all of the angels as friends.
Oh.
You just couldn't see my friends because they were invisible. And look, freaking tragic, but
that makes me so sad. And it sounds like that is by design.
Yes.
It's not accidental that you didn't
No.
have any friends. That was the point of all of this. How awful.
Yeah. So that was really my childhood. That shaped a lot of who I became and the decisions that I would later make. So that's enough about me. Let's go to the next slide. Isn't he cute?
Oh,
Sasha.
Yeah.
He's about the same age. He's six in this photo, and I was 6 in the photo just before. But now, Sasha, why don't you share with everybody what your background was and what school was like for you, and take it away.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, fairly quickly, very similar upbringing to what Sherrie described. So in my case, my father is, well, I was 3rd generation Jehovah's Witness. The picture that's on the slide there is my father is the little boy there, and then that's my uncle, my grandfather, my grandmother, very devout witnesses. So I, along with Sherrie, but in my case, possibly a little bit more, had the expectation to keep that generational faith going within the Jehovah's Witness faith. And no doubt for many of us watching here, regardless of what faith we're from, there's an expectation that you need to keep that family spiritual line going. You need to make sure that you are being as respectful of the faith that you are privileged to be born into. So similar school environment. I always struggled because I wanted to have friends, but I realized that people in the world were always out to take me away from Jehovah. Terrible environment for young children to be raised in. And yet it's not unique to Jehovah's Witnesses. Many insular religious organizations and cults went through that. So I tried to do my best. And I guess the other thing is we trust our parents when we're being raised. That's inherently how we've been, how humans are. We trust that our parents are telling us, not to run on the road, not to touch the hot stove. Oh, and our faith is the only true faith. So we kind of believe them because we don't know anything but that. And then in the process of that, there's a huge expectation to make your parents happy, to be the best possible child that you can be. And of course, that means conforming with all of the behavior. And so very much like cult specialists will talk about, there's the BITE model: behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotion control. And that applied to us as little kids growing up in this environment. Everything was regulated. All of those BITE of the BITE model was regulated. And we had a lot of stress. I think when I look back at my childhood now, I see that I was happy, but I was also a kid who was under a lot of constant stress, because not only were my parents always watching, but God was always watching me. So anything I thought, anything I said, anything, I just wanted to be a happy kid, but you had that expectation that this is not our real life. This is just our trial run before the proper paradise happens in the future. And so don't get so involved with things now. So basically that expectation is put on us that you couldn't be that happy, carefree child that all children deserve to be.
And so this is kind of the reasoning that makes it okay, the justification for why, you're making your children not have friends and not be able to socialize. It's not that bad because this isn't really the time that matters. It's after your death.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, no. So difference with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's not paradise is not something that you get after you die. They actually don't believe in an immortal soul. They believe that you are a living, breathing human, and that the soul is intrinsic with that process, that breathing process. So they don't believe in a separate entity at all.
So
And
you're resurrected?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
life now in this present world is temporary. This is Satan's world, but very soon, this is the nutshell, 30-second elevator speech. Any day now, God is going to step in and destroy everybody who is not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Every part of this satanic system of things will be destroyed at Armageddon. Only those who are deemed righteous will be able to live forever and ever on a paradise earth, never getting sick, never dying, and we will live forever on this earth made up of Jehovah's Witnesses, where the whole system of things will be completely new. And that's basically the Jehovah's Witness teaching. Only 144,000 humans will go up to heaven to rule as the government, but every other human will live forever on earth, and everybody who's died, who's deemed to be faithful or deemed worthy by God, will be resurrected and restored to a perfect life on earth. That's their sales pitch in a nutshell.
So at that point in time, and when the perfect new world arrives, there won't be any need for witnessing and door knocking anymore, right?
Well, there will be for those that are resurrected who come from other periods of time where they haven't had an opportunity to be witnessed to and have made a choice. So they will come back. Billions will be resurrected.
So you will continue to have the
and
idea
then they'll
is
need to be taught.
Lifestyle.
Yes, so they need to then be taught. They have multiple judgment days. So you've got the first judgment day at Armageddon, and then in 1,000 years' time, after that, there is a second judgment where Satan is let out of the abyss. This is all from Revelation, according to them. Satan's let out of the abyss to tempt as many as he can in his final act of disobedience and rebellion. And then after the earth is cleansed of that, then we're done and dusted. And everyone then lives forever.
Okay.
But inherent with all of that too, and intrinsic with all that, is the fact that, again, that stresses on you, that you can never be assured of your salvation. Either now while you're on earth, because any day you might slip. Even when you get across the line in paradise after Armageddon, you could be at any time deemed unworthy if you fail. So that constant pressure to be deemed worthy is always there. After that 1,000-year judgment, be careful of those who are resurrected back on earth, as you're preaching to somebody from the 1600s who they might take you away from your relationship with God. So there's a constant fear that you're not worthy, that you could slip, and that you could be deemed worthy of judgment. So
and what Sacha's just described, right, is now with the advent of video technology, they have actually done demonstrations or dramas of exactly that, of what it will be like after Armageddon, and preaching to someone from another time period. They've actually play acted that out.
Oh my goodness. So it's not even just, hey, we need to become culturally competent and be able to speak to people from all different backgrounds. You have to know how to talk to people from different times. Like, do you have to learn like Old English? Like, is everybody going to...
Oh, no, they actually believe that everybody will speak one united language after the resurrection. I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole of crazy
Esperanto, right?
Yeah, that's it. but with the religious flair. Yeah, I know.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
But I think it demonstrates, and I think why we're laboring this is because being raised in this environment impacts on the decisions that you then make. So for Sacha, he was baptized at 16. He did leave, complete his schooling, and then he went to become a regular pioneer at 18. But do you want to explain to everybody what Bethel is?
Yeah, so I went to finished high school, year 12. I took up the regular pioneer ministry. I thought that was the right thing to do. We are never encouraged in the Jehovah's Witness environment to pursue a career. Work is just something you do to pay the bills, and so you do that generally in menial jobs. There's no higher education encouraged. In fact, university education is discouraged actively, because you might be tempted away from the faith by this worldly environment. So as a result, you've got a lot of fairly mid-educated people working menial jobs just to get by, because this is not the real life. So I did that. I did window cleaning, part-time sales jobs. But at 19, I had the privilege to be invited to the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, which was in Sydney. Now, I grew up on the West Coast in Perth, so that meant travelling across the other side of Australia, first time out of home. And I lived and worked on site for 5 years at the headquarters. There was 500 odd people there at the time. And that was basically the headquarters for all the Asia Pacific area. The printing of the publications, the administrative centre was there for the preaching work. They had workshops, they had buildings for building furniture and materials to support the Jehovah's Witness machine, you might say. So I lived and worked there, worked with the housekeepers. I enjoyed my time there, but I also realised that it was a very insular environment. You know, it wasn't like the fun environment that a normal 19 to 24-year-old might enjoy going to university or anything like that, because again, you had the constant expectation to be the model person within the religion, how you dressed, what your grooming was like, how your conduct, your conversations, everything like that was always strictly monitored. And so whilst I enjoyed my time there, I could see too that it just served to reinforce that whole cult or high control thinking, that mindset. So basically, since birth onwards, we were being molded into the people that we were expected to be. So who are we? Who were we? You know, we didn't really know our real personality or our real pursuits or hobbies or anything like that, because it was all being dictated to us through that environment.
Wow, it's like you're literally being turned into little robots for the organization.
Yes.
Oh, that's horrifying.
Of course, you don't realize it at that degree at that point, but to really sort of hammer this point home, I'm just going to stop the share to get to a short video that I want to play for everybody.
While you're finding that, this is the culture of Jehovah's Witnesses. They now have created a whole series of cartoon propaganda videos for their younger ones who are being born. They call it the Caleb and Sophia series. If anyone is ever brave enough, go to the official jw.org website and you'll see all these videos. A lot of them are in kind of the Pixar animation style, and they have messages that are very much full of indoctrination.
Yeah, so please forgive the jumpiness. There might be jumpiness of showing this video across Zoom, but the audio is really what I want you to pay attention to. It's just a 2-minute clip, but it will very much highlight that indoctrination and might answer the question for you of why Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate birthdays.
So, Dad, why don't we celebrate our birthday?
Good question. How would you answer that at school?
Because Jehovah doesn't like it?
Yes, but why? Do you like presents and treats?
Yes!
But do you want them like this? Birthday celebrations mix good things with things Jehovah doesn't like.
How?
Long ago, many people believed in good and evil spirits and were afraid of them. They thought presents and treats on their birthday could protect them. And like today, they made wishes that only good things would happen to them.
What does the Bible say about birthdays?
It talks about them, but not good ones. There was Pharaoh in Egypt and Herod in Jesus' day. They were proud rulers and had people put to death at their birthday parties. Can you remember if Jesus celebrated his birthday?
No.
That's right, he didn't. He told us to celebrate the date of his death because it gives us the hope of living forever. And Jesus taught us to give good things to each other anytime we want. Like today. Good timing.
Hi, yes!
And
Okay,
they all live
apologies
happily
for
ever
triggering.
after.
Yeah, I'm processing this information, and this is going to take me a minute. Wow.
There's a wealth of videos like that in that catalog. There's some really disturbing ones that are designed to manipulate the minds of little ones, and it's really quite troubling. Some of them that are just innocent little videos are, you can see the expectation is put upon the children in that environment. So yeah, just if you ever want to get more of an understanding of the environment Jehovah's Witness youth are raised in, check out all of the videos on there. They've got so many of them.
It just reminded me of my aunt. So this is my mother's oldest sister, whom I'm very close to. She tells me that when I was 5, and Auntie Bev's not a Jehovah's Witness, that I had visited her and she had her Christmas tree up, and this confused me. And that as a 5-year-old, I went up to Auntie Bev and said, "You're not a bad person. Why do you have a tree?" I had equated badness with the tree. And that's just 101 indoctrination of Jehovah's Witnesses.
But I can absolutely see how that would happen. I mean, based on just watching this video here, it sounds like they're making children think if you get a birthday present, well, think about birthday presents have spirits and people murder people at their birthday parties. I mean, what? That would be terrifying. I imagine being, 6 years old, walking away from that thinking, well, the other kids at school are having birthday parties. Maybe they kill people at them. I mean, the implication is there.
It's so harmful. And so you can have well-meaning kids who might make you get you a Christmas present or whatever. They might want to share something with you, and they in innocence come to you with a little gift for Easter or Christmas, and you're then as a child, you're in this quandary of, oh, that's nice, they thought of me, how beautiful, then, but this is an evil present from a worldly person, and how's God going to feel about this? And this is this is a special territory for me, and I really should be making a good witness to them. Like, it just is a colossal.
And at school, kids have a birthday party and a slice of cake is given. We would literally throw it in the bin. You'd sometimes have to do that, and you do it in front of the other children. Like, what does that do to a developing young mind? Well, it basically teaches us that everyone else is bad. And anyway, sorry, keep going.
So moving things along from childhood, I left home at 19 to serve where the need was greater. That's a very JW term. And so I moved to a congregation about 30 minutes away on the coast of Perth in Scarborough. And it was around this time that I met Sacha. This was actually a really great time of life, I have to say. Yes, I was working part-time 3 days a week, trying to support myself as I pioneered and was trying to achieve 90 hours a month every month of witnessing. But I had a really great group of friends at that point in time, and it was fun. Life was fun at that point. And as I say, this is around the time that Sacha and I met. I think we met in 94. Now, we talked about earlier in the poll questions about if we've been told to only be interested in someone within the religion. So for Sacha and I, it went a little bit further than that. It wasn't just we were only going to look at someone within the religion. We were only going to look at someone who was in full-time service and who was taking the religion as seriously as we were. So there are a whole lot of Jehovah's Witnesses that I just would never have considered. And likewise for Sacha. What would you say to that, Sacha?
Yeah, exactly right. And I guess that's what gets us to the thrust behind our presentation today, is that in all of that background and environment meant that we even had to be very judgmental about who we might choose for a romantic relationship. And in the Jehovah's Witness environment, you could not date for any other purpose except with a view to marriage. And so you get in this situation that the moment you express interest in someone, you're basically already married. So there was none of this just dating for the sake of learning, developing, getting to know people, and nothing like that. And of course, within the dating environment in Jehovah's Witnesses, expressions of affection or anything like that, extremely limited. So here we were in a situation where we basically would choose, almost like an arranged marriage, choose from somebody who was deemed to be the same spiritual standard as us, who was pursuing their spiritual activities and relationship with God and within the organization at the same level. So we might have found other people attractive there, or we might have thought, hey, I'd like to get to know this person. But if they weren't deemed to be of the same spiritual standard, you couldn't do it. You would be judged as bad for looking at someone whose family perhaps only attended the religious services twice a month. Well, obviously you couldn't look at them because you were of a higher standard, or whatever it was. So if they weren't active in the ministry,
associate.
Yeah. So I mean, we were in that situation where basically you choose someone of your similar age bracket and your similar spiritual standing.
Wow. So would this be something that was directed by elders in the church or parents? Was there a lot of kind of selecting for people who the appropriate partners would be, or how would
social pressure? It's a lot of social pressure. So yeah, if I was to look at someone who was not a pioneer and who was working full time, if you're working full time as a youth in the organization, then you are not using your youth in a way to honor God, and you are putting material things first. And why would you put material things first when we are living in the last days and Armageddon's not far off? So you'd be questioning someone's spiritual level, their level of spirituality, if they were not showing by their life decisions that they were serious Jehovah's Witnesses. So a lot of judgment, heaps of judgment. And yeah, just so much pressure. So with the J-dubs, like any other fundamentalist religion, there's a form of purity culture in that there is no sex before marriage. Physical affection is very limited. You have to have a chaperone with you at all times. You're never to be alone together. So it's not the best circumstances with which to get to know one another. But
and I guess you would definitely say there's a caste system of sorts where you really have to mix with those who are of the same sort of level or standing.
Wow. So this is really kind of hitting me like a ton of bricks now, realizing, what you're saying. The implication seems to be that once you marry someone, that almost the whole entire point of that pairing was for both of you to be equally serious about how you were going to serve the Jehovah's Witness organization. Like this is the entire basis of the relationship.
Right, correct, exactly.
Ooh.
And it's a social clique as well. When you're in the social clique of the full-time servants within the organization, it's a totally different structure. It's just, the pressure is incredible and you're all in the know, and it's just really cliquey. That's probably the best way I can describe that.
And, other people are sort of have asked questions too. What's the purpose of that? Well, is it just to pop out more kids and to keep the organization going? Well, Jehovah's Witnesses have an interesting background with that. For years and years, they discouraged having children. In fact, going back decades and decades, because they would say, now's not the time. Armageddon's coming any day now. This isn't the time to bring children into this evil world. Wait till the new system. So for many years, that was the culture. They've since realized that that's not how you grow a religion. And so they've kind of changed things. And so there is a lot of material presented now for little children. And so they are now encouraging families to have children and raise them in the Lord. And that's how the organization helps to grow, amongst other things. But at our time, when we got married, it was very much discouraged to have a family. And if you did have kids, you were kind of viewed as, well, you weren't taking spirituality seriously because you were distracting yourself with children. And so this whole cognitive dissonance, but aren't children a gift of God? Yes, but they're taking you away from what you should be doing, which is the preaching work.
Even caring for your own children is
right.
Taking you away from what you're supposed to be doing. Oh my goodness.
So we made a conscious choice not to have children after we got married.
Yeah. Speaking of, so
these photos, you guys, I cannot.
Little babies. Oh my goodness. I look back now, we were 24 and we were just so naive, so naive and innocent. But at our wedding, so we had a lot of people within that clique of full-time service at our wedding, and it was expected that we would be a full-time service couple. We did have the opportunity to, if we'd wanted to go straight into Bethel, Sacha could have stayed at Bethel and then I would have gone in with him, but we decided not to do that. We felt that it would be better for us to spend some time together rather than be in Bethel trying to do the same thing. But life was really difficult. I struggled with working 3 days a week and still trying to do 90 hours a month and be a wife now. And I was just burnt out and exhausted, and it was hard in those first 18 months. And as Sacha mentioned, like menial jobs, he was window cleaning, and I hated the constant struggle of trying to have enough money to pay bills and get by. And so after 18 months, we decided to stop pioneering, which came with a little bit of shame and judgment, because you are now leaving the full-time service group and bubble. And there is a natural kind of soft shunning that even starts at that point. You're no longer in the inner circle. You're no longer part of that clique. So you don't know the latest stuff going on in the organization, and you're judged as not having trusted Jehovah enough to help you get through, so that you could really value your privilege of full-time service. God, it triggers me how this language just...
But Jehovah doesn't pay the mortgage or pay the rent.
Right.
So,
He doesn't?
No. Who knew?
Another thing too, I guess we need to acknowledge, is very much a misogynistic environment that, surprise, surprise, that the religion has. And so there's that constant pressure that I had to be the husbandly head. And whilst I tried to be, kind of caring, I also recognize, looking back now, that I basically thought that I was the head in the relationship. And so I would need to determine the direction and the decisions of our relationship and our family unit and all those sorts of things. And so it created an environment where, rather than working as a strong team, it was kind of like I needed to lead Sherrie in the right spiritual way, and the pressure that put on us. And I look back now and I realize, Sherrie was struggling with that, with our environment. We were struggling to make ends meet. And then I'm struggling to try and force us to still be the perfect image of the perfect JW couple, and all of those stresses and pressures there. So basically, this outside influence of a high control religion interfering and encroaching into a family unit when it really didn't belong there, is something that exists for many in these environments.
Yeah. Sacha was appointed as a ministerial servant. In fact, he was a servant before we got married, and he was a public speaker, so public talk speaker, which was one of the meetings that they had. So they had 5 meetings a week, and the public talk on the weekend was an hour-long discourse. And Sacha had a few outlines that he had for those talks, and he became a traveling speaker. So he was assigned to go to different congregations to speak. And that's why I put wifely role, because all of a sudden I went from being a full-time servant in my own right as a single woman to now being a wife. And the shift is subtle, but it's there and it's present, that all of a sudden my standing within the congregation was no longer as an individual single woman. It was now as a married woman, and it was substantially less. It was now everything channeled through Sacha, which I thought was, the deal. I didn't not like that. I didn't reject it. Now I do, most strenuously, but that's where I saw my place was now. Was in those terms.
Wow.
So things start to change for us. Like we've left, we're no longer in full-time service, but Sacha's still a servant, and we start to get older. By our 30s now, we make decisions regarding children. We actually did want to have children. We changed our minds after we'd left full-time service, but unfortunately we weren't able to conceive due to some health issues that I have. And the only way that we would have been able to manage it would have been through IVF. But of course, we considered what the organisation said about IVF, which is that it's a conscience matter, that you can have IVF as long as it's the husband's sperm and the wife's egg. However, the concerns are about fertilization and what you do with those embryos. You cannot leave those embryos there. You can't terminate them or destroy them, of course. They believe that life starts at conception. So those are actually lives in their view. And so, you don't know, of course, in the IVF process, how many embryos you're going to get. So Sacha and I were like, no, we'll just leave it to the new system and have children then.
Wow. So wait, I'm trying to understand. So it would be allowed for people to decide to do IVF, but if you did, would you have to basically like try to use every single one of the
Correct.
embryos? Like you, and
Correct.
so like you could potentially end up being pregnant like indefinitely into the future with all of these embryos.
Right. And
Wow.
you would be judged, you would be spiritually judged if it was known that there were embryos that were destroyed, because they're very much a anti-abortion organization. So so basically it's kind of, as with many things within the Jehovah's Witness bubble, there might not be a direct ruling, but there'll be a strong cultural implication or guidance as to what your decisions would be. There'll be expressions couched as you saw with the propaganda video for young children. It'd be, now if you're taking your relationship with God seriously, is that something you would really want to do, brother, sister? That, so you're kind of being led to the conclusion that they want.
Yeah.
So it's the same as the question that you led with at the very beginning of, well, do you really think you should go to your friend's house? And you're supposed to say no.
Correct.
That they don't
Correct.
have to tell you, you've been taught to tell yourself no.
You are led to make that decision, but you're being manipulated the whole time. So we made that decision at that point. And also when you think that you believe that Armageddon's coming and that you're going to have this utopian new system where all of your desires are granted, we just put it off to that. So that was children. Then house ownership was always strongly discouraged as well, because why would you buy in the system that's going to be destroyed? But we got to a point in about 2010 where it actually became silly to not buy a house, because rents were just as expensive as mortgage repayments. So we ended up purchasing a house. And around this same point, so we're, early to mid-30s, mid-30s by this stage. I'm not going to have children. What am I going to do with myself? I looked at starting to pioneer again. But that actually caused a bit of conflict between Sacha and I, because Sacha had started his own business by then, and he was relying on me to give him some help in that business. And here I was going off witnessing again from door to door. And so it actually caused conflict, so much so that I had a moment of recognition. There was a kind of a real pinpoint moment for me where I just thought, if pioneering is going to cause conflict with my husband, then I'm not going to pioneer. It was actually a really pinpoint time for me that impacted, I believe, then decisions I made later on. But I thought, no, so I just stopped. I just abandoned it. I didn't pioneer anymore. And I then put all of my resources into my career. I was a practice manager for a cancer practice in Sydney, and my employers had offered the opportunity for me to do a university course so that I would be qualified to do my job. And of course, as Sacha mentioned earlier, higher education not really looked at in a good light. Even doing an online course, as I was considering doing, would not be considered good. So Sacha and I kept that very quiet. And as part of my, wifely submission, I actually went to my husband to ask his permission if I could do this course, if I could do the diploma. But all of these factors, all of these things start to become contributing factors to what then later happens. So this is now around 2012, 2013, when I'm doing this course. Unbeknownst to me, this is around the period of time, or even a year or two before this, where Sacha is starting to wake up. And I think I will let Sacha say a little bit more before I get to this slide. Do you want to talk about waking up?
Well, I guess recognizing the fact that we're in that environment, here you were pursuing education for a noble reason to help people through cancer. So I had no problem whatsoever with supporting you in that. I was taken into counselling sessions with the elders in the congregation a couple of times about the fact that I allowed my wife to pursue university education and how that was the wrong thing. And at that time, I would start to stand up to them about that. But I was also doing my own research into the faith. And I guess that's why Sherrie says waking up. We use that expression, ex-JWs are familiar with it, or maybe people from ex-religious cults. I just allowed myself to question, is this faith really the truth, as I'd been told all my life, as Sherrie and I were forced to believe, or were there problems with it? So it's a long story in itself, but I had started to go down the rabbit hole of researching the origins of the religion. I recognized that the religion was extremely problematic. And yet here I was still in a leadership role in the congregation, encouraging others to pursue all of the Jehovah's Witness activity. But I started to have cognitive dissonance about so many aspects of it. I then allowed myself to recognize that this can't be God's one true organization. And then I had to do the next step, which is analyze. Well, once I'd analyzed the religion, I analyzed the book on which they claim to be based, the Bible, and realized that the Bible was problematic and that the personality of God is extremely problematic. And so I started to recognize that here was Sherrie, here's all of these wonderful people who are saying that we're created in the image of God, and yet God is a problematic character who's okay with misogyny and slavery and homophobia and genocide and incest and worldwide violence and all these sorts of things that we see in the Bible. And that's completely opposite to who we try and be as people. So I saw myself in a situation there where I didn't think this was true, but I felt trapped in this religious bubble. But I also couldn't go to Sherrie and say, hey, I think the religion's wrong and I think the Bible's problematic and I think the personality of God is problematic. And hey, is there even a God? I couldn't go to Sherrie and ask those questions. So there was a couple of year period where we kind of had to navigate this. We're playing the role of still being within the religion, but I don't really believe, but I can't actually raise that to Sherrie. So instead what I did was just supported everything that she was focused upon. I supported her education. I supported her career. I never judged anything that she wasn't doing within the religious environment. And just created this calm environment, as she's put in the slide there, where rather than focusing our relationship as we'd previously done upon the religion and all of the religious activities, I shifted the focus to supporting her, supporting us as a couple, and just changing what it was that was the foundation of our relationship. I would occasionally drop comments to her about problematic aspects of the religion, what they were teaching at the meetings, or maybe something from the Bible. I might occasionally go, look, I was just reading this passage of the Bible and this is a bit disturbing. Did you know Lot? And, we know the story of Lot, but did you see the rest of the story? I don't remember the congregation ever teaching us about what else happened. And I just drop it and then say, anyway, let's go for a walk, or let's go off and have dinner or something and change the subject.
Meanwhile, he just walks off, oh, well, whatever, I'll go to something. I'm in the meantime going, holy crap. I don't know what to respond to that. I haven't thought of that before, but I didn't know what to do with any of it at this stage. As I say, all I saw was that Sacha was happy. He was supportive. If I couldn't make a meeting, he never made me feel bad about it. He was just like, no. And then he would tell me, because I knew what would happen at the meeting if I didn't turn up. Sacha would get the, oh, is Sherrie not well? Is she okay? Because, you know, you're not there, because there's no reason that you wouldn't be there unless you're on death's door. And Sacha would flip that on its head and say to them, oh, no, she's great, thank you. But, you know, I'm so proud of Sherrie. She's doing a fantastic job helping people with cancer. They couldn't say anything to this. And then Sacha would tell me that he was defending me at the hall. So I think this is something that I wanted to get across in this talk to others. If you are in this situation, if you are no longer believing and you don't know what to do with your spouse, I recommend this, where Sacha was just loving and happy and let's go and spend time together. Let's go to a football game. Let's do this. Let's do that. As I said, I threw everything into my career, and I've got a photo there of the two surgeons that I worked for, who were, well, Prof. Thompson basically wrote the book on how to treat melanoma. He's just world-renowned and incredible academic. And I just loved working with them and learning as much as I could from them. And so I participated in a lot of the activities and events that the charity was putting on, and Sacha came along and supported all of that. It just meant so much to me, even though I knew that others in the congregation would be judging that. You know, why would you be involved in a charity when, you know, only God's kingdom is going to solve the problem of melanoma? So there was constant judgment, but Sacha he didn't buy into that at this stage. He was just supportive and just created this environment at home that gave me the space I needed to be able to think and sort of try to come to terms with things as best as I could. However, Sacha did not get opportunity to, I suppose, you know, where was it going to lead? At some point, something was going to have to happen. It all came apart on this day. We had a staff member, I mentioned Sacha had his own business, and in order for me to work full time and do this diploma and all the stuff that I was doing, we employed one of the young witnesses in the congregation, who was also a regular pioneer, to do the bookkeeping for Sacha so that I didn't have to do it, created some time, blah, 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 blah. She, on this particular day, fossicked around on Sacha's work computer and discovered that Sacha had not logged out of a ex-Jehovah's Witness forum. He was on an apostate website. And she saw his username and some of the comments that he had been commenting. And by this point in time, Sacha is well and truly out and awake. He is an atheist. He is, I think, how many posts did you have by this count? Was it 4,000? Something ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Something ridiculous that was on there.
Now, Sherrie, did you know at this point that he was out?
No. In fact, it had only been in the January of 2015 that Sacha was no longer a ministerial servant. So right up until this time, he was still a servant in the congregation. So I had no idea about this at all.
And that I think goes to your question there, Cara, is that, and what I had tried to do with that whole creating a safe space and reframing the foundation of our relationship, I kind of had not an end game, but my motive was to get to a point where it was safe for me to say to Sherrie, I don't believe this faith anymore, and we could have a comfortable conversation without her having a reflexive response that the religion would have encouraged, which was, hey, I'm going to leave you and our relationship's busted. So I kind of thought that was paving a safe space. What happened here, what Sherrie's saying, is kind of, it hijacked that process that I was trying for. So no matter how well you try and plan for things, something came up. And yeah, look, being exposed as somebody who's researching apostate or non-Jehovah's Witness approved material is worse than anything else you can do within that religious bubble. So that's basically why this happened so quickly. It wasn't how I planned for things to happen.
Yeah, you were playing the strategic long game, and then it got accelerated. Okay. Tell me what happened.
So that was a really difficult weekend. So after she discovered this, she went straight to the elders and reported it to the elders. She didn't come and tell Sacha or myself, but just went straight to the elders. And then so this was on the Friday, the 5th. On Saturday, the 6th, she called us up in the afternoon and said that she was resigning. She'd been working for us for about 3 years at this point. And this came out of the blue. We were just shocked that she was resigning. And Sacha asked her on the phone call, why? And she said to him, you know why. And then hung up.
And you were listening to the phone call. Yeah.
I'm here the whole call, right? And I'm like, you know what is going on here? Sacha tries calling her back several times. She doesn't answer. And so Sacha eventually then calls her father, who's one of the elders in the congregation. And he tells Sacha that, oh, and by the way, this phone call was not on speaker. Sacha's having the call with the elder. I can't hear what the elder's saying, but I'm present, I'm there. I'm watching Sacha's face. And Sacha's talking to this elder. The elder says to him, we are so upset. We're all very distressed. You've been on apostate websites, and we had to have an emergency elders meeting this morning over this. And Sacha's just watching me as he's responding to this elder. They eventually got off the phone call, and now Sacha has to tell me what's happened, that she's resigned because she discovered that he was on a ex-Jehovah's Witness forum. And this is how I learn. My husband doesn't believe in the JW religion anymore. Why are you on this site of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses? So that weekend, it was exquisitely painful for both of us. I'm terrified because I don't know what our relationship now rests on. What does this actually mean for us, for our future? If he no longer believes in the religion, then what's it actually based on? Where are the boundaries? Where are the parameters? But I don't know how to word it that way at this stage. I'm just feeling a whole lot of emotions and really not sure what to do. And Sacha's trying to be as honest with me as he can, but he can see that I'm like, what the hell? It was a really difficult weekend. At the same time, the elders were on the attack. They were trying to bring Sacha to heel, and they wanted to have a meeting with him. So 2 elders to meet with him to discuss all of this. And both Sacha and I knew that if that meeting went ahead, he would end up disfellowshipped out of the congregation. And that would really put a lot of pressure on me then as to what would I do? Because this is the one circumstance that a Jehovah's Witness woman can leave a marriage and have the full support of the congregation.
Oh, apart from infidelity as well.
But even with infidelity, it's okay. They will, it's slightly different, I feel. Apostasy is just such a clear cut.
So in Jehovah's Witness world, the only 2 reasons you can separate a relationship is adultery, or if one is deemed a spiritual threat, apostasy. So here was a situation where Sherrie would have been told that she had the blessing of the congregation, the organization, to leave because I was a spiritual threat to her.
Okay, yeah. And I'm not going to ask Sherrie this question that's in my head right now, but Sacha, I'm going to ask you, were you worried that she would leave you if this happened, if you were disfellowshipped? Like,
yes. At that point in time, Cara, that weekend, I thought everything was over. I just assumed at that point, and it was wrong of me because, I should have trusted Sherrie to make her own decision. But at that point, I thought, that's it. Our whole relationship is over because of our whole, and I guess that's why we spent so much time with our background of indoctrination and upbringing. That is what should have happened. That's how the script plays out. And so I assumed, well, that's it. We're going to have to divorce and separate and go, our own way, and life's over. And what I am grateful for, though, in that moment is the fact that we had a couple of years period where I was able to slowly shift the foundation of our relationship from the JW activity to focusing upon what it was that was important to us, Sherrie's career, education, and the things that drew us together. I'm grateful for that time period of transition, because it then put us in a position where at least we could have some open communication, where at least we can discuss things together without it being a knee-jerk reaction.
Wow. Okay. And Sherrie, tell me, I'm on the edge. I know how this ends, and I'm still like, my stomach is in knots right now. Sherrie, what was going through your head at this?
Look, I was just terrified. I was so scared. I'm asking him these questions, and I'm scared to hear how he's going to respond. We talk about, Armageddon. We talk about the new paradise, new system, sorry. And Sacha's letting me know as gently as he can that he doesn't believe this, and that he finds it all very problematic. And, he's saying things like, so what, the person next door gets killed in Armageddon just because they said no to taking a Watchtower awake? And there's a certain amount of logic to what he said, but I was so indoctrinated at this point that I responded with things like, that's something a 16-year-old would say. Like, you are expressing doubts that a teenager would come up with, not someone in their mid-30s.
Possibly a teenager who was going to subsequently leave the faith.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
wow.
I would say to Sherrie, why should a 2-year-old child be killed because their parents said no thank you to us on a Saturday morning when we knocked on their door? Why does that child deserve to die? And I would just do a lot of those questions. I'd say, how do we know that we've got the truth? Like, why are we so convinced that this is the one true religion? And so Sherrie was in this position where she was just really worried about, well, who was I now? Because she didn't know, and I had to reassure her that I am the same person. She's turning to me and asking questions like, are you going to start smoking now? Are you going to start swearing? Will you start celebrating Christmas? And I understand that's because that's the thing she was told would make you a bad person. And so I was able to reassure her that I'm exactly the same person. In fact, in many ways, I'm probably trying to be a better person, because I'm able to come to a lot of my moral foundations or ethical foundations, not based upon the Bible or the religion that we were part of, but based upon who we are. But trying to have that conversation in the midst of upheaval of emotions was difficult.
Yeah, really hard. And then I realized I had to ask him some bigger questions on what he actually thought about the Bible and what did he think about God. And so to learn in this weekend, I learned not only that he no longer believed in the Jehovah's Witness religion, but that he didn't believe there was a God, and he didn't believe that the Bible was God's word. So just everything I felt like the carpet had been ripped out from under my feet and I didn't know which way was up. But what I did know is that I was not going to cope going to meetings by myself without him. I knew I couldn't do the spiritual widow thing, because I just would have been really cranky at anyone coming up giving me fake sympathy of, I'm so sorry to hear what's happened to Sacha and how are you coping? I knew that I would react quite aggressively to that, because I felt for Sacha. I felt like he was, what he was showing me that weekend was someone who was obviously extremely distressed and upset about the situation. He was just as unsure as I was as to what it actually meant for our marriage. And I hated seeing him in that kind of turmoil and distress. And I wasn't going to hop on the bandwagon of, saying anything negative about him. It just, it was a really challenging week. And so throughout the following week, the girl that had dobbed Sacha in, she did 1 day a week of work for Sacha with his business. I gave her work at the medical practice. So on the Monday, when I went back to work, who did I have to face but her? And that was really challenging for me. She remained an employee of the practice for about another 8 or 9 months before she resigned. So that was super challenging to have to deal with that. But we went to one meeting afterwards. Sorry, you wanted to say something then, Sacha?
No, you go ahead.
Okay. We went to one meeting the following week, so the next weekend after the 6th of June, we went to a meeting, and I've never felt so uncomfortable in a Kingdom Hall in all my life than that meeting, because it was very clear that the Jehovah's Witness grapevine had gone into overtime. It was such hot, salacious gossip that Sacha had been found out to be an apostate. You could tell everybody had been talking about it. You know, that silence when you walk into the room and the shifty glances, and that was all happening, and nobody was coming up to me at all. Now, we had an elder who came up, and he basically, I realized after the meeting, when he came up again, once the meeting had finished, he was actually on guard duty, watching Sacha, wanting to make sure that nobody came up and was influenced by him.
Oh, but you're already a threat. You might,
yeah.
Influence people with your satanic idea. Wow.
Yeah, Sacha's a threat.
Yeah.
So one thing sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Sacha.
One thing I'm grateful for is that through this process, so here was Sherrie in a situation where, were there more slides, Sherrie, or was that the last?
Oh yeah, no, there are more.
Okay. Here you were in a position where you didn't judge me straight away, and you recognized that this, I was trying to be the best husband I could be, and our relationship was based not upon the religious environment, but upon us. And I'm really grateful in that time that you didn't just throw me away based upon what the religion was telling you, that the religion was saying this person is a threat, but you were saying, but I know who he is. I know what our relationship can be based upon and who we are. So I'm really grateful for that. And I know a lot of people in this situation will go through similar things, or have gone through similar things, where their spouse didn't give them, or their partner didn't give them the benefit of the doubt, didn't look at who the person really was, but looked at the image or what they were being told the person was. So I'm really appreciative that you were patient enough to go through that with me.
Well, I think at the end of the day, our marriage was based on more than the religion. We care for each other. We love each other. And I didn't like seeing how the religion was treating you and the distress it was causing you. And I also didn't like how the religion treated me, because I became collateral damage, and nobody contacted me to see how I was. I was just given up. And I knew that the only way I would get support from the organisation was if I continued to be active. If I continued to go to meetings and be present, then I would get some form of support. But I couldn't bring myself to do that because of what I'd already said.
But it needs to be acknowledged too that I was more than happy to support you. If you had said to me, I still believe that this is God's true religion and I still want to be a member, I made it clear that, well, that's fine. You do you and I'll do me. There was no expectation that, well, I've come to these conclusions, therefore you need to adopt mine. And I'm grateful for that, because we came from a background where I had to set the lead and you were going to have to do what it was that I said in the family, because that's the religious mindset. I was more than happy to say, you can exist in your belief structure and I can exist in mine, but we can still have a close relationship. And I think the power of it is your waking up process, as you'll go into here, was your own process. It was not because I've determined that that's what you have to believe, and if I'm atheist, you have to be atheist. It was none of that.
And so in the 18 months since that 2015 event, we just focused on ourselves. We focused on our marriage. We spent time together. We went to music concerts. We went for drives. We went away for weekends. We just spent time with each other. And Sacha never once pressured me on anything. He didn't burden me with anything that he was thinking or feeling as far as the religion was concerned. He was still incredibly active on that ex-Jehovah's Witness forum. He offered to show me. He sat me down and he got to the front page of the website. I'm like, I couldn't see anymore. My alarm bells were ringing mad. And I'm like, no, can't look at it. It's apostate, it's apostate, it's apostate. So it took me so long to finally get the courage to analyze the religion for myself. And it was when this report was released. So the report was released on the 28th of November 2016. I happened to be at an airport and had an hour to kill while waiting for my flight. Sacha said, why don't you read the report? I made a joke about, no, it'll make me angry, and then looked up the report and read it. And reading this, like that particular report, it was safe in that it wasn't apostate. It was a government. So I knew that it was going to be non-emotive, not about bitterness, not trying to tear down a religion, but trying to care for children. And so as I read it and saw how bad the organization had been, I was mortified and realized, why does it take Satan's organization to tell God's organization how to protect children? There's something wrong, something really wrong. And so Sacha didn't know that I was actually reading the report. When I got home from work that night, I walked in the door and I just said, it's not the truth.
As in, the religion is not the truth.
Religion is not the truth.
All of these things have proven that it cannot possibly be God's one true organization.
So there was a period of time where we did have different beliefs. We had different, when I didn't talk about it because I was too scared. I didn't have the mental headspace to really think about it. I just got involved in life and let work and spending time with my husband take everything up. Not until this happened. And once I read this and had the realization it's not the truth, then everything started to crumble down pretty quickly after that. And I do realize that I was in a very privileged position, because as I came out and woke up, I had Sacha's support. He never at any point went, now that you know this, how about this, this, and this? He let me find it for myself. All he did was say, you might find this website useful, you might find this book useful, you might find this podcast or YouTube, whatever, you find it yourself. And so he let me then take ownership of my own process and just was there to support it. So as I started to go down that rabbit hole and just compulsively just watching and consuming as much information as I could and learning all of these things. Did you know 607 wasn't even the year that Jerusalem was destroyed? And Sacha would just be like, yep. It was tumultuous for me, but I'm incredibly grateful that Sacha was there as a soft landing place for me in the immediate. A lot of people don't have that.
Well,
So
and I imagine if, oh, sorry.
No, go on, sorry, Cara.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people, they've got to try to blunder through this on their own. And even worse, they have a hostile spouse.
Yeah.
And that's really, really difficult to deal with. And I do very much feel for people in those circumstances. Moving on to 2017, though, now that I was awake, it was all about the firsts, you know, doing the things that we never could do. And I now was like, damn it, if it was something I couldn't do, I'm damn well doing it. So I did it all. 2017 was just a wild year. We went to Skepticon, which was just amazing. We said that's like our new annual convention now. First Halloween, which we got super involved in. Sacha dressed the house and he did all this stuff.
Best time of the year.
Yeah, that's it. Birthday, which of course now you'll all understand why we have a beheaded head on a platter, because no Jehovah's Witness, ex-Jehovah's Witness birthday is actually a true birthday unless there is a beheading. So we embrace that. And
well, that's what we were taught as children growing up, that the only birthdays in the Bible had people beheaded.
Beheading.
John the Baptist, therefore birthday's wrong. So this was a great slap in the face of that.
Yeah, and it really was a perfect present because it duels wonderfully with Halloween. I mean, hey, it's fantastic. And we had our first Christmas in 2017 just for the sake of having a tree and presents and just enjoying it. After we get through the firsts, Sacha and I, our focus then changes and we shift into wanting to use our experience in a way to help other people and to be soft landing places for them. And that leads us to organising an event in 2019 where we had, I think at this stage, it's the largest ex-Jehovah's Witness gathering in Australia. We had 134 ex-Jehovah's Witnesses across Australia and New Zealand. We also had some of the most well-known ex-Jehovah's Witness activists come along from the US and Europe, which was really quite incredible. We had a film crew from Los Angeles and the most amazing of amazing of amazing. This photo here where Sacha's handing a gift. That gentleman there, he's a federal justice now, but at the time of the Australian Royal Commission, he was the senior counsel for the Royal Commission, and he just is, he's a superhero to all of us ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, because the way that he studied and researched and learned all about the religion to understand the mechanisms of harm with child abuse. He even had one of the governing body members on the stand and he questioned him for an hour and a half. And it just, for XJ Dubs, Angus Stewart is a hero. And to have him come along that day was just outstanding. After that day, Sacha and I were then, well, we still want to help people. So what can we do now? And that's when we learned about recovering from religion. And early in 2020, I became a volunteer and went through the support group leader training, and we started the very first Sydney Australia group. And it's been absolutely an incredible group right from the very beginning. 18th of April was our first meeting. It's always been on Zoom due to COVID, but we always get about 20 to 30 coming along. We have 2 meetings now, which are just wonderful. I love the support groups. In January 21, we brought together other RfR Australian volunteers to form a leadership group so that we could raise awareness about religious trauma and also raise the profile of recovering from religion, get more people to become volunteers, make sure more people know about the services so that they can get support. And through that, we have done a media release and had quite a few newspaper articles or online articles, magazine articles, again, to really promote recovering from religion. This year, we had, we're on national TV a few weeks ago, which was quite something. Unfortunately, they didn't mention recovering from religion, which didn't get edited in, unfortunately, but our story certainly was getting out there. And in February this year, I was appointed an honorary fellow with one of the universities here in Sydney, so that we can, along with recovering from religion, we can have events, speaking events, where we can get academics and mental health professionals and cult survivors, lawmakers, policymakers, media, as many people that this subject touches on, come together and have discussions on this and look at what we can do to improve the situation, provide support, but also make organisations accountable for the trauma that they inflict. So there's lots of exciting things now happening from the experiences that Sacha and I have had. We both love working along with recovering from religion. I'm thrilled that I'm on the board now, have been on the board for 18 months and absolutely loving it. And am the international development director helping other countries that also want to do the same thing. We've got a group in New Zealand forming. I've got contacts now in other countries across the world that are also wanting to do similar things. So I have a small team of 2 other RfR volunteers helping me just with that, of reaching out to other internationals. And sorry, Sacha, you say before I talk about next year.
I guess it could well be said that we've gone from a background where we were actively preaching to try and force people into our religious environment to a background, to a complete about circle where we're active in just supporting other people to be whoever they want to be, to become your best, most authentic self. And the work that we're doing with recovering from religion is kind of like the beautiful, neat bow on the end of that, to tie up that whole story and to tie things up to really where we should be, living an authentic life, supporting other people. So we absolutely love being able to just completely flip the script of our life.
Yeah,
Sacha, I love how you put that as the kind of just putting a bow on it at the end, because it sounds to me like that what you said about just helping people to live their most authentic lives is exactly what both of you were doing all along in your own relationship as well. And that's why you were able to get past all of that. And that is just incredible. Y'all, this has been incredible. And I know we've gone over time a little bit, but I didn't even want to stop you because this is just such an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing this. Oh my goodness.
So my very last slide is to encourage or invite everybody to come to Sydney next year, because we are applying to march in the parade on September 25th in February for the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras. And next year it combines with World Pride. It's the first time World Pride is coming to the Southern Hemisphere. And so it's all happening in this one event. And we have the wonderful Dr. Daryl Ray and Gayle Jordan coming to Australia as well. So we're all going to be marching in this. We've got a few other, I think Phil Sessions is going to come and David Klinging is going to come, and we just want this to be the best. It's going to be incredible. And at the same time, the university appointment I spoke of with a speaking event, we're pivoting that event around Gayle and Daryl's visit here so that we can just tie it all together. So incredibly excited for next year. I'm in contact with a lot of other academics who will also be participating in the speaking event around this time. So if you don't have plans next year and you want to get out because, hey, you know, COVID's just stopped everything, I think this is a wonderful opportunity to come down and spend some time with us. And that is the end of my presentation.
Sherrie, thank you so much. That was incredible. I'm stunned and amazed, and I'm definitely going to this event. Do not let us forget about this. Like, keep reminding us. This is incredible. I'm speechless, which doesn't happen to me that often. You're welcome, everyone. Okay, and yes, that was fantastic, and that was perfect. I'm so glad you shared all of that with us, and we have loads of questions. We don't have time to get through very many of them because we got to wrap up, but this has been fascinating. The chat is just going, it's off the chain. There are so many questions. I can't get to all of them, but let me just ask you a couple of them. Someone was asking now, and I love this question: what's been the best part of your lives post Jehovah's Witness? How did everything change?
For me, the best part has been getting to know myself and letting myself explore my own potential to be what I want to be. And RfR is a very large part of that, because I had never had any grand plans to be on a board or plan to take an organization globally, or, you know, all these things that I'm currently doing, I would never have thought of doing for myself. And just developing leadership qualities and being able to inspire or help other people in this way and let myself develop and become more. I'm loving that journey. And I have to say that for me, that's probably the best part of this whole process, is just being able to push myself past previous boundaries and let myself run riot. And I'm just loving it. I love it.
And I would add to that too, the fact that we're no longer living with that, in that fear, obligation and guilt bubble that religion saddles so many of us in, that we're able to be our authentic selves outside of that bubble. And that is so empowering. And you know, for so many of us that are part of the RfR family or community, we recognize that now we're able to actually live without any oppression and live an authentic, happy life outside of that fear, obligation and guilt.
Yeah, life's amazing. Life is fantastic. And we now appreciate today. We appreciate now. We value the present, and we're not living for some utopian something that's never going to happen. We channel David Warnock and seize the fucking day.
Carpe the fucking diem. That's it.
Yes.
And on that note, I can't think of a better way to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, both of you. This is just incredibly inspiring. I don't even know what to say. This is fantastic. This is the best episode ever. Just kidding. They're all amazing.
Yeah.
This is just fantastic. Okay, so I want to go ahead and start wrapping up, but I know there are a bunch more people with questions too. Are y'all going to be able to stick around for the hangout for a little bit? Okay, so all of the rest of y'all with your questions and comments, stay here with us for the hangout. We're going to talk more about this. But before we do, let me just remind everybody that we'll be back again next week. RfRx is every Monday night, best night of the week. And we'll be again next week talking about big ideas with our guest Secular Rarity, aka Elliot, who's going to be joining us to talk about engaging in discussions about religion, science, philosophy in online settings without losing sight of our common humanity, which I think is going to be a great follow-on to tonight's episode as well. And he's going to be sharing his experiences, having conversations about big ideas with people from all different backgrounds and perspectives. And so bring your questions. That one's going to be an interactive discussion and Q&A session. So we'll have a lot more time for that as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing from him. And Sacha, tell us where we can find these other episodes.
Thank you. Yeah, just briefly, please go to our YouTube channel or our podcast or any of our other socials. Check out all our previous episodes of RfRx. You can find them there. If you've got questions or comments, send them through to us. We'd love to have your feedback. We've got our blog, we've got podcasts, we've got Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, be a part of it. We've got a newsletter. We've got all of these resources. So basically, yeah, please check out everything that we have available through RfR.
Thank you. Yes, that is perfect. I put all the links in the chats too, so check out whichever of those you're interested in. And as always, we want to hear from all of you. So that is why we have another feedback poll. So we would like to know how you enjoyed tonight. This helps us know how to improve, what's working, what we can add to make it more relevant for everybody. So please take a moment to check out that feedback poll while we hear our closing thoughts from our amazing and fantastic and wonderful Executive Director, Gayle Jordan. Gayle, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Griffin. Nice introduction. I so appreciate that. Sherrie and Sacha, you have blown us away. I know that you all have not been able to pay attention to the chat, but what an impact your story has had on everyone and you've taken us through the emotions, the childhood and the elementary school and the pressure and the effort to conform and the effort to be a good JW and all of the cost that was, and through all of the sacrifices, and then through the incredible realization that we have built our lives on a house of cards. This is not, and I've shared that experience, so I understand it, but what what a beautiful job you all did to explain that. And then the joyful, joyful ending that you all are thriving and you're doing the things that you're doing and having now paying it forward, so to speak, to so many other folks who are struggling with the same issues. And this cannot have been an easy story to share. This goes deep and it exposes some pretty deep wounds and makes you vulnerable and all the things that this is. And I am grateful beyond words that you have shared that with us. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for presenting this. Thank you to our usual crew, our troll stompers and our hosts and all the folks that make this happen, even our behind the scenes folks that pull this all together. We're so grateful for that. Everyone enjoy the Hangout. It's one of our most fun parts of the week. There's other Hangouts, there's other support groups, there's other opportunities for you to be involved. So anytime you feel like you need a little hope, healing, and support, don't hesitate to reach out through our chat, through our helpline, through the telephone line, through our support groups. And when you're ready and you'd like to click on that volunteer button or the donate button and partner with us that way, we will welcome you with open arms. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.